What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Podcast weekly real estate tip. And today I'm here to talk to you about what the hell is going on with the overall economy, what the hell is going on with the overall real estate market, where the hell is this thing going, how the hell did we get here in the first place, and most importantly, what to do strategically as a real estate business owner to ensure that you are positioned for your business to continue to grow, scale, and thrive during these crazy times that we are amongst. Why do I say crazy times? Look, the last 3.5 years for all of us, take it back to March of 2020, to all the way to today, and you start reflecting back on that, it's been a hell of a roller coaster ride for all of us, man. A lot of changes, a lot of craziness that we've seen, and so forth. Now, this all started way before then, which I'm going to break down here because I want to break down with you how we got to where we are today. But look, we are far from being out of the woods. Things are going to get more challenging. Things are going to get tighter. Things are going to get tougher. And I'm going to explain that and what I mean by this. Now, the first thing that I want to say here is, look, I am not here to fear porn anybody. I am not a Chicken Little, the sky is falling. When I create messages like this, I usually get a lot of hate comments of, oh man, I'm so sick of people out there just trying to fear everybody to death and, these scare tactics. And look, let's not be naive here. This is not a scare tactic. Like, I'm here to just talk about realities. Now, when it comes to, operating from a place of fear, I don't operate in fear. And I'm not here with the intent to fear porn anybody. Look, I'm one that always looking at the silver lining. There's always massive opportunity regardless of what's taking place. There's always ways to go out there and crush it and kick ass, right? Like, I always look at the good, not the negative in a situation. However, I'm also going to deal in realities. I'm not going to be naive and bury my head in the fucking sand and be an ostrich and not pay attention to shit that's going on, because all the people that operate that way are going to get blindsided and they're going to become extinct. They're just going to, while their head's in the sand, they're just going to get ran the hell over. Like you and we're going to be able to see that car, so we can just get out of the way, let the car go do its thing, jump in our car, and keep freaking going. Yeah, right? So it's not about, is this a good thing, bad thing, negative or positive? It's let's deal in realities and have an understanding of where we are truly at, what led us to where we are at. And then if we understand that, like if I understand what the things are that led me to where we are at, and then I have a deep understanding of historical events, okay, then I can plan effectively on where things are going, right? And then put those strategies together, and that's what this is about, right? So we're going to break all of this down. I want to make sure that, all of you guys have a good understanding on all of this. So we're going to start with where we are at. Then we're going to get into what led us here. Then I'm going to talk about where this is more than likely heading. Now, I'm going to be the first to say here, I do not have a crystal ball. So I'm not going to be one of those that jumps on YouTube or jumps on the podcast, or there's already a bazillion of these freaking influencers out there, quote unquote influencers, whatever people give those of us creating content titles, I just look at it, I'm just a dude that sells real estate that talks about it and puts podcasts out there, right? So, but with this, I know that there are an abundance of people out there that are like, oh, full certainty, this is the way it's going to be. All right, well, dude, none of those people know exactly how this is going to be. I don't know exactly how this is going to be. So I'm not going to come with you or at you with full certainty saying this is exactly how this is going to go. Right? Because, dude, it's bigger, it's more beyond nobody fucking knows with full certainty. Not Jerome Powell, not Janet Yellen, the head of the Treasury Department, not Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, not freaking Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum that everybody thinks is this puppet master, and I'm not saying that, he isn't, maybe have some influence, but dude, none of those people have can predict or know with full certainty where any of this is going. Look, there's shit that's at work that's bigger than them, bigger than me, however, if we have a base understanding of this, we can then predict on, okay, the different scenarios that this can play out. And then I could develop plans for how these are going to go and how these things are going to roll out. So how I always operate and what served me really well has allowed me to continue to grow and scale my real estate business for 18 years straight, booms, busts, everything in between throughout this time, is look, assess the markets, look at how this could play out. I hope for the best. I plan for the worst. So I create a plan for worst case, absolute worst case scenario. So like right now, hey man, I'm planning on this being like, let's just say, okay, hypothetically, if this becomes the worst economic crash and the worst real estate market crash in recorded history, what do I need to be prepared and plan for that? Okay, and then let's just say that doesn't happen, and it just continues. This bubble continues to inflate, and it's whatever, if that's somebody's best case scenario, and then from there, okay, I got best case scenario plan in place, I got worst case scenario plan in place. Then if anything happens in between, if one of those happens, hopefully I'm good to go if I plan correctly. And then if anything in between happens, then also I'm good to go, right? So that's what this is about, and that's what we're going to break down here today. But what I want to break down most in depth here, versus trying to get through predictions and whatnot, is again where are we at, what led us here, the moves that are being made right now, and unless these things change, what is going to continue to take place. And then again, most importantly, at the end here, we're going to talk about how to go out there and prep for this stuff to ensure our business grows regardless. All right, so where are we currently at? So if there's three important things to understand when it comes to our real estate businesses. All right, we are now in the most expensive time to go out there and acquire and buy real estate in the United States recorded history. Now that could be also the truth for all markets out there. I don't know all markets, right? I'm here in the United States. So I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. And I, coach and consult people, all over, well, really North America. So, this holds true for, most of North America. There might be some places in Canada I'm unfamiliar with, but at least all over the United States, it is the most expensive time in United States recorded history to go out there and acquire real estate. Now, you might be like, oh, well, Josh, that's not true. You're in Phoenix, Arizona, man. Prices were a little bit higher. We dipped a little bit since, peak 2022 prices that once interest rates came down. Sure. That is true. That is a true statement. However, when we start factoring in the cost of capital, so interest rates going through the roof, when we factor in increased taxes, increased insurance, all this other stuff, and you put all that together, it is hands down by far the most unaffordable time to acquire real estate for the average American, because the average American isn't just going out there and paying cash. When we factor all of those things in, it's the most unaffordable time to go out there and buy real estate in U.S. recorded history, right? Okay, number two, it is the most expensive time to be alive as a U.S. citizen, just to be alive right now, just to operate life. Life is, just go out there and buy shit and operate and live day to day. It is now the most expensive time, the most unaffordable time, the lowest quality of life, if you want to look at it that way, from a purchasing power. So I guess another way of saying this is our dollar, it domestically is the weakest it's ever been, right? So it is the most expensive time to be alive as a U.S. citizen and just live life today. All right, then on top of that, it is the most competitive real estate market that we've seen, at least since NAR. The furthest that I've been able to see this data tracked from NAR is back to 1983. So what do I mean by this? Okay, when we factor and start looking on the number of total transactions that's taken place and the contraction that we've seen, because transaction volume is contracted back to about 2008 volumes, so that's fallen off of a cliff. Then from there, when we look at active number of listings, overall transactions closing, and the relation to that to the number of active licensees. So all the way back to 1983, if you look at the numbers, typically the number of active listings versus the number of active realtors is usually about 2 to 3x. So usually there's 2 to 3 times the amount of active listings compared to the number of active licensees. So if there's usually 1 million licensees, let's just say, then there'd be, somewhere between 2-3 million active listings on the market. And there's been, certain spikes where that's increased and whatnot, but average is about 2 to 3x. Well, about first quarter of 2020, that inverted. So now if you look at where we're at today, there's over double the amount of active licensees versus listings. So when we look at that equation, that's what I'm speaking to now, the most competitive landscape that we've ever had, at least, going back to 1983 in the real estate space. So most competitive. So you got more realtors chasing lesser transactions and lesser listings. So that right alone already creates kind of a crazy environment. Then from there, because it is the most expensive time to be alive as a human being here in the United States, and so if you look at the weakest our purchasing power that we've ever had, so our dollar getting us the further, least furthest, if you will, and the most expensive that real estate's ever been, right? Put all those things together. What does that mean, man? Well, you got about 50% of the consumer that's just completely wiped out from being able or wanting to participate in this real estate market. And we've got this again. We got 1.6 million realtors all just competing for this lesser business. So this has created, a different dynamic, which we got to be prepped for. All right. So then from there though, and this is going to My best prediction, which I'll explain why I have this base case, why I have this hypothesis. My prediction is that this is going to exacerbate, like we're in the beginning phases of this, right? But first, let me talk about why are we here? All right, so you guys are all aware of, I'm guessing that you're aware of what happened in 2008. And we can break down 2008 and be like, okay, well, it was the subprime market. It was ninja loans. It was a lot of shit, right? It was a combination of a lot of shit, a lot of bad policy, a lot of fraud, a lot of, might have been the subprime market that broke the straw on the camel's back, whatever you want to call it, right? The financial system completely freaking fractured and broke. Led us into the great financial crisis. So the end result there was a massive liquidity crisis that essentially just shut down the banks, right? Because when you look at, a lot of people think of, okay, well, I go to the bank, I deposit money, they give me a loan. That's how the banking system works. Well, there's a whole, what they call the shadow banking system. And this isn't like tinfoil hat conspiracy. These are like actual terms, even though it sounds all top secret, conspiracy theory bullshit, but it's not, right? You have the shadow banking system, also known and referred to as the repo market, right? And this is really the lifeblood of the banking system. These are short-term loans that banks and financial institutions, so whether it's, your commercial banks or your hedge funds or your private equity firms, they do small, just overnight or short-term loans to each other. They have, like Goldman Sachs might have a shit ton of assets, but they might, those assets are tied up and they need, they might be kind of cash strapped, right? Liquidity strapped in the moment. So there's all these short-term loans happening behind the scenes, bank to bank, financial, institution, a financial institution. Well, that's what collapsed, right? That's what dried up, where all these banks, couldn't, go out there and lend to each other, collateral. I mean, all of that just dried up and fractured the overall financial system and led to where we led with that. So then from there, though, and of course that led to the worst overall housing market in recorded history. So you could sit there and break down and argue that the Great Depression was a harder financial times overall as a country than, the Great Recession. But the Great Recession was a worse housing market. So as I'm talking about these things, just like we might be leading into another Great Depression or something beyond that, but it doesn't mean the housing market's necessarily going to be as bad as it was in the Great Financial Crisis. I don't know. It's yet to be seen, right? So, but my point here with this is my belief is that when the banking system, or when I shouldn't even say the banking system, when the financial system collapsed in 2008, that it was never fixed. And I'm going to share with you why I believe this, why I say this, and I'm pretty damn certain on this. I won't say 100% certain because maybe there's knowledge I don't have, but based on all the moves that are making, like this seems like, the probability is extremely high here. All right, so I believe that it crashed at such a high level and it's never been fixed, and we're just seeing an elongated, result of that 2008 crash still now today, right? And why I say that is if we look at 2007, like we have had an artificial economy since 2007. So from 2008 until today, if we didn't have this artificial economy, and I'll explain what I mean by that, we'd now be in a 16-year-long depression. We actually everything that you've seen, all this GDP growth, all this economic growth, everything that you've seen since 2008 has been artificial. What do I mean by artificial? I mean it's been money that has been printed out of thin air and has been injected into the economy. It has been monetization of debt and through stimulus and deficit spending. And again, I'll explain deeper what I mean by these for those of you that don't know what these terms are. That's kept this afloat. Right? This hasn't been natural growth. This hasn't been an actual good, strong economy. An example of this is like, okay, maybe you're running your real estate business. You're losing $200,000 every single year for a decade plus straight. But maybe you got a rich family member that keeps stroking the $200,000 check to make up for that deficit. So to all these outsiders, they're like, oh yeah, Joe Bob's real estate business is good, man. They're closing all these homes. They seem to be doing good. They continue to make it, but it's only made it because you got this freaking rich family member keep floating you. Otherwise, you'd be fully insolvent. You'd be dead broke. You'd be bankrupt. You'd be out of this business. This business would be non-existent. That's essentially what's happened here. Like the economy on its own has not been strong enough to go out there and withstand and grow. So it's just been made up by pulling money out of the future, pulling it into the now, which again, these are the things that, because we're breaking down here, what led us to where we're at right now today. So I know that this is, not always the most fun, sexy stuff to sit here and listen about and talk about, but it's important to know this. It's really important to understand this. At least I believe so, right? So then from there, so if you look at, so let's break down the balance sheets and what I mean by this. So this artificial economy, because again, if we move this away, we'd be in a 16-year-long depression. So my best guess, by everything I study and everything I see, and I spent a lot of time on this stuff, is that they just keep band-aiding this shit and have since 2008, never actually doing the full surgery to fix it. They just keep band-aiding it. And I don't know, like I'm starting to believe that maybe this thing broke beyond repair and it's unfixable. We'll see. We'll see where this goes, man. But okay, so if you look at from 2007 till today, you've got the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. So the Federal Reserve is a private entity, but they're in control of monetary policy, and then you've got fiscal policy, and but the Federal Reserve, when we look at who creates money, who prints money, it's the Federal Reserve, right? So their balance sheet is over 10x'd since 2007. Then if you look at the Treasury Department, so our government, right, their debt, it's over 3x'd. So we're talking going from a $10 trillion debt on the U.S. government's balance sheet to what are we at now? Close to $34 trillion in debt. You look at the Federal Reserve, they were like $800 billion, in far as debt on their balance sheet. Now they're like, north of 10 trillion. At least the debt that's reported to us, government's off balance sheet debt, unfunded liabilities, probably more like 150, maybe even 200 trillion. We don't know. We're not privy to that information, right? We're just a bunch of peasants that don't get, we're not, this shit doesn't get shared with us, right? So that's where this stuff gets kind of hard is, we only have so much data available to us. Okay, so then from there, let me start breaking this down. All right, so if you look at what is the government doing today? Okay, so the government is running a $2 trillion deficit of on an annual basis. Now you might sit there and be like, oh, well, governments are always in debt, debt, and I get that, right? For most of our lives, that's just what we've seen over and over and over, but not to this magnitude of scale. And if we want to be able to prep for where things are going and what led us to here now and what's going to happen next year at the grocery store, like this is shit that we need to pay attention to. All right, so when you deficit spend, because there's only 3 ways to grow. Let's first break down. This might be helpful. There's only 3 ways to grow GDP, meaning have positive economic growth, right? So you got 3 ways to do this. Number 1 is through continued growth in population rate. That has been out the window for decades now. Right. So if you look at in the United States, now globally, this is out the window as well. Like the United States has the most healthy demographic of any first world, industrialized country out there. But we're a mess when it comes to our birth rates and demography. Right. The rest of the world is fucked on a way bigger scale than we are. So if you look at like China, it's like a straight up inverted pyramid where you got more 85-year-olds and 75-year-olds and 65-year-olds. You got double the amount of 15-year-olds than you do 5-year-olds, right? So the planet in like 100 years from now will be so much less a population than exists now today. Yeah, right? Like people are so worried about overpopulation. Well, the reverse is happening on a massive front right now. The human beings actually now qualify for the endangered species list, which is kind of crazy to think about, right? So here in the United States, the average couple needs to have 2.16 kids per couple for just replacement rate. That would be just to keep population at the same size that it is. Right now, we're average 1.66 kids per average couple. So, and you look at average sperm rates, you look at all of this stuff, and we're in a massive decline with population growth, right? Now from there, can that be made up? Yeah, through immigration, and maybe this is why, again, I'm not privy to this stuff. I don't get, just like you and I, it's like George Carlin, the famous, the old comedian, he's like, hey, there's a good old boys club and you ain't in it, right? So look, I don't get told this stuff. You don't get told this stuff. But hey, man, maybe that's why the border's open right now and they're letting in 9,000-10,000 people a day through the border. Maybe this is, a reason for that because they realize, okay, we're going to have complete economic, or population collapse otherwise. And, because again, this is in decline. Okay. So economic growth has been, as far as population growth, has been out the window for decades. All right, so number 2 is productivity per worker, increased productivity per worker. We just now have hit the lowest productivity per worker in recorded history. So if we look at this and we look at, okay, like, dude, people today are just freaking lazy. Now, I'm not saying you, I'm not saying me, I'm not saying those of us that are watching or listening to this podcast, right? We're here for a reason. We're driven. We're not amongst the lazy. But just look, like, you guys get it. You go out there, like most people do, they're not willing to freaking work. People don't have the work ethic, and each generation's probably said this, but you guys are lazy compared to my generation, but it's just waned and waned and waned, and the average productivity per worker is just fucking just terrible, right? Now, will that be made up, and can that be made up through robotics and AI? Sure. But that'll probably take decades to come. So you got 2 of the 3 ways to increase GDP completely out the window. So there's only one left, which is through debt, right? Through public and private sector debt. And this is what's been happening for 16 plus years. So the other 2, like, out of just natural growth, healthy growth, have been out the window, right? The third way, monetization of debt, right? Essentially just money printing, if you want to just extremely, simplify it, is what's created this artificial economy and what's led us to where we are at now today. Because you got to understand, when you go out there and when you're printing money and you're creating more money and you're monetizing debt and you're deficit spending, like our government has been and continues to do, you're pulling money out of the future into the now. These things are highly inflationary. This is why we are here today. Right? This is why we've just come out of the biggest all asset class boom in recorded history. This is why every time you go to the grocery store now today, your food is fucking, however more percent, it's like you can get half the groceries today that you were able to, a couple years ago. This is why every time you go to the gas pump now, it's going to be more and more expensive. Even though we saw some artificial stimulus relief at the pump, but that was all, again, manipulation. It wasn't real. And by real, I'm not, you put the money in the pump. That was like you were paying for it, and it did get reduced, right? But why? And this is why you got to look at these things. Like, why is this going down? Why do we have some temporary relief at the pump? Right? Well, it's because, dude, the current president and the current administration, and I'm not trying to make this political or anything like that. It's just the fact of what took place, decided more so than any other president recorded history to dilute our petroleum reserve supply that we have, our strategic petroleum reserve. So all the oil that we had in our reserves, to go out there and put those into the economy, to go out there and get relief at the pump. Right? What is the strategic petroleum reserve supply in place for in the first place? It is for an absolute emergency. Okay, if we go into World War III, which it's looking like that could be happening closer and closer and closer. Hope to God it doesn't, but who knows? It's like, that's what that shit's for. Or if, I don't know, we have a cyber attack or something crazy goes out and our whole power grid goes out and we need to, that is for a freaking extreme emergency. Now maybe they define what we were experiencing an emergency, but anyway, that's done. They can't, it's already at dangerously record low levels. There's only so much of it. They can't get rid of all of it. So now we are experiencing, this is why, oil prices and gas prices are up 40% in the last 3 months and continuing to go up, because now we're starting to see what the free market actually dictates when it comes to those prices. All right, so then when we look at what the government is doing now today, right, because we get told that, they're going to fight inflation, they're going to get inflation down. No, right? It's just not, they can say whatever they want to say. Don't listen to words, watch their actions. Okay, what is our government doing? They're deficit spending to the magnitude of $2+ trillion yearly, at least what we're privy to the knowledge of and what they choose to disclose to us. So every time they go, cut Ukraine a check. And again, I'm not here to make this political. I'm not here to say they should be doing that, shouldn't be doing that. I don't know. Again, I'm not in the rooms. I'm just an outsider looking in. To me, some things don't make sense. Something like, I don't know, but it's not like they tell me, like what's going on, like why we're doing this stuff. They just tell me, we got to support Ukraine. They don't tell me why. They don't tell, so I don't know, right? All I know is they're doing it. They're stroking all these checks and they're spending money like it's going out of fucking style, and they have to continue deficit spend because after all the taxes that they collect, after all of this stuff, there is not enough left over. So there's actually a $2 trillion deficit And they just continue to expand that and expand that and expand that, right? So this is going to continue to create more and more inflation. Another way of looking at that is, or looking at this is, okay, your purchase power is going to continue to go down and down and down. Quality of life is going to go down and down and down. All of these things. So it's just going to make food that much more expensive. It's going to make all the shit that we want to do, at least for essentials of life, more and more expensive. And how do I know this? Right? Because again, you watch actions, not words. Okay, in order for this to reverse course, they would have to quit deficit spending. Right? They would have to quit pulling money out of the future and pulling it into the now. They'd have to quit all of that. Now, that would take them, I don't know, cutting the size of the government 2 to 3x. That would take them having to abandon all their geopolitical moves that they're continuing to do right now. That would take cutting out a lot of social programs. They're not doing those things. They're doing the opposite. They're expanding it in the other direction, right? So again, this is just going to, I don't perceive life when it comes to inflation, like at least what I'm doing and what I'm prepping, myself for, my teammates for is, hey, just plan on life being 10% more expensive every single year for the next 5 to 10 years until we can see otherwise in this course changing, to go out there and prep and plan for that. But anyway, that's why we're in the situation that we're in right now, because we've had this artificial economy that we continue to have today. This is continuing. And this is what I mean. We'd be in a 16, like all this quote unquote growth that we thought we saw over the last 16 years, this longest bull market in recorded history. It existed, and it was allowed to exist because of artificial stimulus, right? And why I say not art, it's actual real money that they created, that they pulled, that then just made all of our purchasing power wane over time. If you look at, 40% of every dollar that would ever be printed, and the existence of the U.S. dollar, what was printed and pulled into existence during the lockdowns between 2020 and 2022. Now, people will sit there and say, oh, well, it's not inflationary. Okay, well, why is life 40% more expensive today than before you made those moves? So, and how is that not like people can, they want to talk all this shit. They want to say whatever, but just, pay attention. Like, what is it doing? What is it feeling like? What are you seeing? Okay. So we got the 3 ways for economic growth. We talked about the expansion of balance sheets. That's what's led us to this situation. Now, when it comes to real estate, right? Because when you're all of these things, right? When you lose purchasing power of the dollar, asset prices go up, right? So, when we're experiencing inflation, you want to be in hard assets. So, we saw a lot of investors, a lot of people in those assets, and those continue to expand. But then, during the lockdowns, right, what took place? Why did mortgage rates get so damn low? Is because you had the Federal Reserve buying $90 billion a month of mortgage-backed securities. So many that I have conversations with in this industry will sit there and be like, oh, well, dude, the Fed's going to reverse course and they're going to start dropping the overnight rate, and that's going to solve, interest rates on mortgages. Maybe, maybe not. And then I'll just ask them, I'll be like, okay, let me ask you this. Before the Federal Reserve started their rate hikes, our interest rates essentially went from like 2 to 3% to about 6% before they even started hiking the overnight rate. Why did that take place? If the overnight rate, the Fed rate, sets mortgage rates, why did that take place then? Right? No, it's because that was the first start of their quantitative tightening policy, where they stopped buying mortgage-backed securities, which is why we were seeing 0.5% a month per increase on mortgage rates before they even started touching the Fed funds rate. Right? So it would take, in order for us to get back down to those crazy 2-3% mortgage rates again, it would take then the Federal Reserve or some crazy buyer would have to come out of the woodwork. But the Federal Reserve is the only one that can afford to piss away money and go out there and buy that quantity of them, during risky environments and whatever, and that's willing to go out there and do that. So, and look, when you have continued population, because this is another thing I have so many conversations around of. And again, I don't know this for fact. I'm just trying to use my own, mental computing power here, when I'm thinking about this. I'm like, okay, well, you have each generation getting bigger than the previous generation. You got expansion of population growth, year after year after year for, thousands and thousands of years, hundreds of years, whatever. So each new generation coming in is bigger than the previous one. So you got more people to buy stuff, build stuff, consume stuff. Okay, well, you can get away with very low, interest rate policy, so zero interest rate policy. You can have very cheap money and still have overall economic expansion. But then now, we've got a couple things going on right now. You got deglobalization taking place for the first time in any of our lifetimes, and you've got shrinking demography taking place throughout the planet. And at least from the due diligence that I've done, and again, I'm not saying that I'm a full expert on this aspect that I'm speaking about right at this moment here, but at least from my awareness of this, it's very difficult to have free money or extremely low cost money when we have population, reduction, not expansion, right? Because now you got less people each and every generation to build shit, to buy shit, to consume shit. That puts us in an environment where money needs to be more expensive. So I don't know if we're ever going to, we just might be for the rest of our lifetimes in a higher interest rate environment. Just might be the way it needs to be. I don't know. Yeah, right? Unless they completely switch around monetary system. Maybe they go into MMT, which looks like they're going to go. That'll be a discussion for another time. But if they go down this MMT route, go to the CBDC route, which is going to, probably be filled with a whole series of other problems, maybe then they can go back there. I don't know, but who knows? That's yet to be seen. All right. So, okay. So then if we look at, I already talked about this, trying to check my notes here. So we got continued monetization of debt, continued deficit spending, which again is just leading us where we at. So where are we at and then today, right? So we already talked about, so I'm going to talk about the consumer for a second, so you guys can kind of see, where things are at and what we're looking at. All right, so this is what all of this monetary and fiscal policy that we've been seeing over the last 16 years is put us in this position now. So year over year, so from last year to this year, we had one of the biggest, if not the biggest, increase in year over year consumer debt. So we had 7.55% increase in consumer debt. Okay, the average consumer's savings rate pre all the COVID stimulus was about 9%. During the COVID stimulus, that shotgunned up to about 33%, because people were holding on to that stimulus money. Now today, that's down to about 3%, right? So then from there, we start looking at that. Okay, well, it's 10x lower than the COVID stimulus. So all of those excess savings out the window, right? Then from there, it's about 3x lower than it was averaging pre-COVID, which makes sense. When you got life today 40% more expensive than it was just 3.5 years ago, it's not that the average person is just trying to hang on. They're not able to hang on. They're depleting all their savings and their debt is going through the roof. Their credit card debt. So again, we've got record low and record high speeds of acceleration of drain savings. We got record high year over year increases in consumer debt. So we're looking at 7.55% increase year over year in consumer debt. So we're talking credit cards, we're talking student loan debt, medical debt, household debt, all these fronts, right? You have 11% increase year over year in homelessness. So usually we're talking like 2%. Now it jumps to 11%. So you got a lot of more people, having to go become homeless. You got about a 30% or so increase in these most big cities year over year in violent crimes. You got 10% year over year inflation when we start looking at real CPI, right? And by real CPI, I mean this got manipulated and changed. I'm not saying this is a negative; it just is what it is. But during the Clinton administration, how CPI and how unemployment all got refactored, right? They decided they had to rechange, how they calculated these. And one of the reasons is because the federal government has to adjust Social Security based on the CPI numbers. So these numbers get manipulated, so they look better and lower than they are. So and whatever, maybe they have their reasons. I think it's all bullshit, but my opinion is irrelevant. But they have their reasons, and maybe those reasons are justified. However, though, because in order to study how we compare today to other times in history, we have to run those through the same models. So right now, we'd be experiencing about 10% inflation. Like you just look at whatever inflation number they tell you, just 3 to 4x that, and that's usually about right. So in my best guesstimate, based on everything that's taking place right now, is we are going to experience about 10% year over year inflation for the next 5 to 10 years. Because everything that we're doing right now with all the monetary and fiscal policy and just everything that's going on, not just monetary and fiscal policy, but just overall policy, is highly inflationary. All right, so then we look at, you got, and then if we look at unemployment rate, You got an unemployment rate that is every bit as high today as it was during the Great Depression. So we got about true unemployment rate about 25%. When you start factoring in the unemployable, like those that are just not choosing not or I shouldn't say unemployable, the participation rate. Then if we look at the amount that can't work because of injuries and disabilities, which that's, skyrocketing over the last couple of years, the amount of injuries and disabilities where people can't work, this whole, 3.5 or 4%, unemployment number, again, how they calculate it has changed. But if we calculate the same way that they did, during the Great Depression, during the 70s, 80s, during the 87 crash, really any prior time, to the Clinton administration, we'd be looking at more around 25%. As far as unemployment rate, you got 25,000 daily auto repos taking place right now each and every single day. You got 1 out of 6 households that can't afford their utility payments right now. You got almost 3 million mortgage holders currently in default right now. Got about 84 million mortgage holders on single family homes throughout the United States. You got about 12 million HELOCs. You got about 2.8% of those all currently, or 2.8% currently in default. So not foreclosed upon yet, but 30 plus days in that default status. You got domestic travel falling off of a cliff, so that's starting to impact your short-term vacation rentals, all of this stuff. So, what does this mean for the real estate market? When it comes to, because one of the dominant questions I get is like, is this thing going to crash and burn or, whatever? Dude, I don't know. Right? I mean, there's so much manipulation behind the scenes. Like, I don't know how long they can keep. I'm surprised it hasn't crashed already. Right? So this is where, look, I don't know. I don't know how long they can continue kicking this can down the road, what this looks like. So I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. But what I do know is that the average consumer today is in a much, much worse off position than they were leading into 2008. There's going to be a lot of people that are having hardships. There's going to be a lot of people that need our services. If you look at the average investor, there's a lot of investors right now getting crushed. You got the average consumer getting crushed, right? And then let's just see, okay, next month when student loan payments get kicked in, back in, what you got about, you start looking at that, what's about 20 or 30%. I think the stat that I heard, I could be way off on that. I'll have to go out there and do some more research on it. But I think I heard that it was like 20 or 30% of adult Americans will be impacted when student loan debt kicks in, and the average student loan debt payment's like $506 a month or something. So we'll see what that looks like. But we got debt skyrocketing, we got crime skyrocketing. So decisions are going to have to be made. Right? People are going to have to make a decision on, should I stay here? Do I need to relocate here due to, have a better, safer place or a more affordable place for myself, for my family? Do I put food on the table for my family? Do I put food on, or do I make my mortgage payment? Decisions are going to need to be made. So, and as I said earlier, man, whether the market goes up, down, sideways, there's always opportunities to be had. So let's now start breaking down, how to go out there and create success and position yourself, during this current market. All right. So, few things. Number one, you need to operate as a brilliant operator. And this should hold true for always hold true for you. However, what we just came out of, the last 10 plus years, that may be a real estate market that we never experience again. But based on everything that we talked about today, the contraction, the competitiveness, look, the best operators are going to be the ones that succeed at the highest level. What do I mean by great operators? Great operators understand that this business is about strategy, systems, processes, tracking, and eventually plugging in the right people, right? So we got to make sure that we have the right strategies deployed and in place. We got to make sure that we have a system and a process for everything in our business, right? So anything that's done more than once, we have a documented, dedicated process for. Those processes live inside of a system. Those systems ensure that we operate in the same way each and every time. Things don't get missed, creates predictability, delivers the right habits, ensures that we deliver the right experience to our clients each and every time. And then eventually, as we continue to grow and scale and need to, we can plug in people into those right systems. So great operators, again, make sure to have a system-based business, right? They make sure to track every element of their business. Just thinking about it like, okay, if you want to become pro at something, right? And this is a market for true professionals. And for those that want to continue to grow and scale and thrive, because this is going to get harder and harder and harder, more challenging for the amateurs. You and I, we're the professionals. We're gonna go out there and fucking just, it's gonna be like fishing with dynamite for us. Like, we're gonna go out there and crush it. It's the amateurs that are gonna get crushed, right? You and I will do the crushing, right? So, but anyway, okay, if I want to become a pro at something, All right, well, dude, like I got to track all my KPIs. Like, show me one professional athlete that everything that they do within their performance isn't tracked and measured. There isn't one that exists out there. So why do you think if you want to become pro, like it's any different for you? No, you got to track and measure everything. Right? So, okay, number of leads per lead source, number of reach outs, conversation, appointment set, appointment conductions, clients, closings, cost per acquisition. You got to track, on not just revenue coming in, revenue going out. So your expenses and expense statements, if you're out there recruiting agents and whatever, you got to track each element of that, average agent production, all of that stuff. But any number, any important KPI inside of our business needs to be tracked, needs to be measured, so then we can create predictability around it. It's the only way to make smart strategic decisions inside of our business, right? It's important, and I'm going to leave that at there because that's all that needs to be said right now, when it comes to tracking. Then from there, okay, we got to be very smart. So right now for the rest of this time, I'm going to focus on strategy, right? Because I can only cover so much about systems, processes, and tracking. Like, just get them in place, do it, like rock and roll, get world-class systems and processes in place. Make sure you're tracking all those data. You just have to have it. No exceptions to that rule. Okay, so then from there, when it comes to strategy, this is a market where we need to target and focus on those that have a need, not just a want. Who needs to sell? Who needs to buy? Not just a want. There's a lot of people that want to buy and sell in this market, but can't and are either unwilling or can't participate because of all the shit that we already talked about. A lot of people out there that want an extra fourth or fifth bedroom, but they can't freaking sell because the life doesn't dictate it or the situation doesn't dictate it. Who are those people that can, that are willing, able, and committed to in this market? So this is operating from a sniper scope, not shotgunning shit out, but operating from a sniper scope. So by sniper scope, what I'm talking about here is just really freaking niching down to those that have a need. So what am I doing? Right? Like, what am I doing in my business and what's my recommendation for you guys? Now, there's going to be a lot, and this comes down to, in this market, because there's lesser transactions. Look, we have to work hard. It's not just about working smart. We got to work hard. We got to work smart. Right now, it's about doing all of these things. So we're having to do a multi-prong approach. So yeah, we're still doing open houses. We're still doing Facebook ads. Now we've gotten more strategic with those open houses and Facebook ads. Like, what are the neighborhoods people are moving to? What's the price point of the product that they're buying? Like, we know what those cities are. We know what those zip codes are. We know what the neighborhoods are within those zip codes. We know what the price points are. We know what the features and the amenities are that buyers that are buying in our market want in that need right now and what they demand. Like right now, okay, buyers in our market, they don't want to fuck with deferred maintenance. So like, they want a fully tricked out move-in property. I don't blame them, the cost of this shit. Like, they may not have the funds or just don't want to deal with it. And I don't blame them. Like, I would, if paying what this shit is, when your average price payment for, shit that's costing my market, after all factored in with down payment, interest rates, all that stuff, when you're paying $4, $5, $6,000 a monthly mortgage payment, I'd want that thing to be fucking tricked out too, right? So I don't blame them, but it's like, okay, what is it that they want? And let me do open houses on that thing, right? Same thing when I'm doing my Facebook ads. Yeah, right? Okay, like, I'm going to run ads with what I know people want to where they're coming from. So I'm very, like, I know exactly what are the states, what are the metros within those states, who am I targeting, what am I targeting them with, and then we're very strategic with our follow-up protocols and follow-up plans. As all of you know, fortune is in the follow-up. So when you're coming up with your strategies, don't just think of lead generation. Think of from inception of that lead all the way until they become a client. That's what you need to be looking at your strategy. It's kind of like when it comes to lead gen and lead follow-up, and I know our industry separates the two always, but I look at them as they coexist. It's like working out with a diet. Like, okay, I can go to the gym all that I want, but if I don't get my diet together, if I'm stuffing my face with freaking donuts and cake and, bullshit all day long, like, I'm going to be chubby and fat. I'm never going to get, like, the gym, I don't want to say I'm totally wasting my time, but kind of, for the most part. Like, I'm not going to get, if those two things don't come together, I'm not going to get the results that I want. Same thing with lead gen, lead follow-up, right? Like, okay, what is my necessary, effective plan to follow up? We got to understand timeline, psychology, all those things per lead source so we can have a proven, effective follow-up protocol. I know when to reach out, how to reach out, where to reach out, how frequent to reach out, how long to reach out for. I know how to speak to that specific human being that is a lead. Leads aren't just leads. We think of them as leads, but they are human beings. So how do I speak to them based on where they're at in the funnel? These are all things that pros do and pros know and pros understand. All right, so let me get, because that was a little bit on the buy side. Now let me talk about, okay, on the sell side, because this is where my biggest focus is and where my recommendation for a lot of you to look and think about. right? Because we want as many listings in this low inventory environment that we possibly can. So then from there, I'm looking at like who needs to sell. Okay, right now you need investors. You need investors that need to go out there and sell. We have a record number of investors that bought bad or underperforming properties. We got cap rate compressions happening for the first time in about 20 years or so, 15, 20 years. So their rents are going down. We're starting to see rental suppression. So if they want to get out of these properties while they can still get at or close to peak pricing, but do so before their cash flow wanes too low. Like, this is an ideal time. So we're going after, rent buy owners, going after long-term buy and holds, same thing, but rent buy owners is just a source for those, because again, you got taxes going up, you got insurance going up. And then also, like, if you go out there, and I recommend this, go out there and Google all the tenant rental laws, that are new in your area and have been new over the last 3-4 years. There's a shit ton of them. Like most places are not pro landlord. So it's getting more and more difficult. There's more and more headaches, more and more, plus cap rates are waning. So it's a great niche, and it's going to continue to expand as these things are taking place right now. Okay, short-term vacation rentals. Because again, all the things that we talked about earlier, you got domestic travel falling off of a cliff. 60% of those that partake in short-term vacation, as a tenant, are millennials. Like, millennials love Airbnbs and all of that. Well, who's getting hit the hardest in this economy right now? For the most part, it's freaking millennials. We are seeing occupancy rates just fall off a cliff for these short-term vacation rentals. And these became a huge fad during the COVID lockdowns. About 50% of all of them that were acquired through the United States that were acquired during that time. A lot of them can't be flipped to traditional buy and holds. They're going to lose money. And when you got average occupancy rates around 70%, now today they might be around 52% in your area. You can go out there and do that due diligence and math. I know it is for my area. But a lot of these have lost, 15 to 20% of cash flow already this year, like month over month. A 20% reduction in cash flow month over month. These are people that, like, you want to sell your house and you want to sell it at or close to peak pricing, because this thing's a pressure cooker. I'm not saying prices are going to come down, but it's a pressure cooker, and the consumer's already breaking, right? So, it's just building up. They're already breaking, so when all these consumers things start to break, more listings flood the market, and then you have less people that can acquire them because they're broken, from an economic standpoint. I don't know, if I were in their position, I would sell now, right? So again, great niche to go after and really focus down on. Then from there, man, NODs, right? So when I look at NODs, all things I talked about earlier, you got 2.8% of all mortgages in default status right now. It's almost 3 million mortgages in default status or that are in that status right now. Dude, I had 3 just last week that came up. When I say my team, and these weren't even intentional going after them, short sales. These were people, past clients that we helped go out there and buy a home over the last couple of years, and for different scenarios are needing to sell, whether it's divorce or whether it's relocating, didn't like the area, whatever. Man, dude, they're all short sale situations, right? So we're starting to see a big uptick in those. And with those, I truly believe that we're in the very infancy beginning stages of notice of defaults. Now, notice of defaults, you're going to have about half of them, at least right now, that don't need to do a short sale. They got enough equity to go out there and sell, but they need to sell fast. So we can go out there and help them, because they need to sell fast, because otherwise they're going to experience a foreclosure and lose out on that equity. Then about the other half that need to do a short sale. So make sure if you don't know how to do short sales, you go out there and get brushed up on those. This is why in my coaching program, I teach my coaching clients all of this stuff, right? And I used to get flack for this, especially back in 2017, 2018. When severe seller markets like we experienced the last few years, and people are like, why do you teach short sales? Why do you have short sale training part of your coaching program? I'm like, look, like I said earlier, man, we need to be well versed in all markets. Just because it's not here today doesn't mean it's not going to be here in the future. Like, I look at this of my niche as a real estate professional is residential real estate in this geographical location. Right, so my job is to be able to identify, okay, who's that residential real estate trading hands with, regardless of the market, whether it's up market, down market, distressed market, booming market. And as long as I know how to service whoever needs to handle those real estate transactions in that market, I'm well-rounded. Okay, I can continue to grow and scale and thrive my business regardless of the marketplace. All right, so again, you guys operate as a true professional. Operate as an operator. So systems, processes, strategy, and event. And so we got systems and processes we already talked about, tracking each element of your business, Then from there, it comes down to overall strategy. And then from there, eventually people that we got to plug into. And that's what smart operators do. And against smart operators, true professionals. Now, if you need help dialing any of this stuff inside your real estate business, highly recommend that you check out my coaching program. You go to gsdmode.com. The top of that page there, you can schedule 100% zero pressure discovery call with me personally. Call's going to be with me. I can walk you through what my coaching program is, what it entails. But inside there, I make sure that you are a brilliant operator, and I make sure that you are very fast. And how do I do that? Not only do I show you what to do, how to do it, I just give you all my resources inside my business. So I give you all the processes. I give you all the resources, everything that you need. So you just plug, play, and go, and you don't have to spend decades of doing this. My goal with this program has always been, how can I take even a brand new agent out of school and get them to go out there and replicate what took me 10 years to build, but get them to do it in 2 years? So whether you're an individual agent, team leader, or broker owner, and you're looking to take your business to the next level, highly recommend that you check it out. Book a call with me, or you can go to gsdmode.com, click on the coaching tab. There is like a 20 or 30 minute in-depth video. You don't have to opt in for it, walking you through what the coaching program is, what it entails, but it's hands down the most effective real estate business building coaching program that exists in the industry at any price. I've just also been obsessed with at the same time, not just making this the most effective, but also making it the most affordable. So this program is less than the cost of the average person's daily Starbucks budget. I mean, it's like $199 a month. And it's not just, okay, go watch these you have daily access to me. Yeah, there's about 100 hours of online coaching and training in there. Yeah, I give you all my resources, everything in my business, every piece of marketing, every drip, every script, my trackers, give you all that stuff, walk you through what to do, how to do it, give you all the resources to ensure that you're able to do it. So you plug and play as quick as possible. You have 7 days a week of access to me. You can ask me as many questions, many things that you need each and every day to ensure that we get your obstacles dialed in and we get you plugging away and getting you growing. We got weekly live group events. We got just a shit ton of stuff to ensure that you know exactly what to do, when to do it, how to do it, why to do it, to ensure that you are supported every step of the way. And figured out a way to do it where it's anybody on this planet can afford it. If anybody's committed to growing and scaling their real estate business, price it where anybody can afford it. There's no excuse that anybody can't afford it at $199 a month. So go check it out, gsdmode.com. Again, I truly appreciate you guys. Hopefully this is helpful. Keep crushing it, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.